Hi, I'm Kathy from Eclectic Images, and join us for a bit more Christmas card making. Today we're going to be focusing on an Eclectic Images stamp called Bauble Cluster, which is a beautiful stamp for colouring. So what we're going to do is use some of the Colour Blast Shimmer Dusts to actually create a background and then to do some painting with, mix it up with a little bit of Perfect Pearls as well. So we're going to create something lovely and colourful and shiny and beautiful. So let's have a look at our stamp first. We're basically just using the Bauble Cluster. May pop a bit of a greeting in there. Maybe the Fun Seasons greetings might work. We'll see how we go. But we're starting off with Bauble Cluster. The products we're using will be our Versamark ink for embossing. And then we're going to be using the Colour Blast Shimmer Dusts and the Perfect Pearls. So the Shimmer Dusts are a pigment powder in amazing colours, and we can paint with those as well as creating backgrounds with them. So let's get started. The first thing up, I'm going to emboss our Bauble Cluster on we're using the Cotton Blend cardstock, just the 210 GSM. Okay, let's stamp that on nice and high so I'm leaving room for a greeting at the bottom if I decide to put one in, or if I decide not, I could just trim the bottom of the card off. That's a big stamp, so big press all the way around. I've got my silver embossing powder standing by and a bit of catching paper. Lift up. Let's pop our powder on. Oh, and I've tucked in behind everything else where Matthew can't even get to seeing what I'm doing. Oh no, he's got me. Oh, he's good, this cameraman of mine.
Can't hide.
I can't hide anywhere. To see where we might need a bit more powder. Tap on the back. And just a bit of a check, make sure that we don't have bits where we don't want them. There's a little bit down there that I'm not too happy with. So I'll just lift that off with my fine brush. Excellent. Now I'm going to get way too fussy now, aren't I? Now I've started. Okay, let's put our powder back into our jar. And pop that out of the way before we get the heat gun going. Just let it warm up a little bit. Now I did say I'm using the 210 GSM Cotton Blend card. Because I'm actually going to be doing a fair bit of watercolouring on this one, the 300 GSM would work really well as well. We'll see how we go with the 210, but the 310 would certainly give me a little bit more body to it, less likely to buckle when we put the water on. We'll see how we go. Okay, let's get some stunning silver happening. Because I'm using the Versamark and a detail embossing powder, this is quite a detailed stamp, but you'll notice that the powder picks up on all those little bits and we won't lose any of the pattern. If I was using a heavier ink or a heavier embossing powder, I might not get all of that fine filigree showing. Make sure I get right to those ends. Now just have a quick look at it across the light. Make sure that it's shiny everywhere. Excellent. Okay, now I'm just going to move this pad out before I start throwing shimmer dusts around the place. I've already made a mask of the baubles because what I'm going to aim for with this card is to actually have the shimmer dust background darker and the baubles lighter. So I don't want to get too much shimmer dust on them at this stage. So we're just going to pop the mask on. Some will leak in underneath because shimmer dusts do that, but it at least means I've got a bit more control over what I'm doing. Now I thought I might try this today in various shades of blue. So we'll get some cobalt, some duke, some peacock, and we might throw just a little bit of passion in there. So when you buy the shimmer dust, they come in pots like this. You can just open the lid and just use a tiny spatula just to take a bit of powder out and put it onto your work. I find it a bit easier though to put it into little pots like these, and we do sell these. and you can just put a pin in the top, and then you can just shake out a little bit of powder from there. You do find after a little while that the pins do go a little bit rusty and you'll need to change them. One of my friends, her husband actually trimmed off some rivets, which are stainless steel, so they don't rust. So he just trimmed those off a bit shorter so she could put the rivets in. I just tend to change the pegs when I need to. I'm asking Matthew to do enough jobs for me with all this filming, I think. Let's just sprinkle on some colour. So by having just that little opening there, it means that I can sprinkle a small amount of colour on. And we'll get some Duke in there as well. Now I'm going to look at putting the colours a little bit in areas so that we go from purple through to blue through to turquoise. And then we might come back in and add some cobalt around the edges, or we might just shade the edges with inks. We'll see how we go. Now I do also have a fluffy brush on the go and a bit of water to wet that. And we'll give our card, I can move my mask out of the way now. It was just to stop those shimmer dusts getting all over our work there. Now I'm going to give it a bit of a spritz with the water on the underneath side of the card, and this will help to stop the card buckling too much. Now we spray on top, and this is where our magic starts to absolutely happen. So yes, you'll see the colours as I'm spraying, we are getting a bit of colour flicking onto our ornaments. That's fine. So I'll just wet my brush a bit, and we're just going to start blending around, just moving those colours around a bit. I actually don't want to cover everywhere, but I do want the colour quite strong near the baubles. The more colour you've got around your embossed areas, the more those are going to stand out, the more you'll get a resist effect happening. So we do want lots of strong colour. If you've got too much water on your brush, just pat it off on a bit of paper towel. But we might leave it quite splashy around the outside there. I think that's looking quite interesting. Just bring a bit of turquoise around there. Just bring a bit of blue and purple up beside the ornament there. Now we can always add some deeper colour with our shimmer dust in next to the ornaments if we want to. And I'm just thinking, this is one of those cards where it'd be really good if I had here's a background that I prepared earlier that would be already nice and dry. Didn't plan that one ahead, did I? Okay, so I'm just going to lift that off my scrap, and we're going to pop our scrap paper pad in there. I paper towel off these backgrounds so that they dry quicker, but I don't want to do that with this one because I actually want it to stay really vivid. So we're just going to run the heat gun over it a bit and see if we can just encourage it to dry a bit quicker for us. You'll notice because I'm using the heat gun to dry that I actually keep it moving rather than when I'm embossing I hold it steady. I don't want to risk over embossing that silver, so we'll just keep it moving, and also the airflow is going to help with drying rather than just holding it steady in one spot. We're using heat and air movement. Looking good now. Let's just give it a little bit of a dry on the back. Okay, we've got a little bit of wet that's leaked around on the back there, so that I can take off with the paper towel and clear off our mat as well. Wonderful. How lovely and dark's that. Now I'll just move our shimmer dust out of the way and bring in my Tim Holtz palette, and this is where I've already put little bits of shimmer dust onto the palette. Now I'll just show you, the cobalt one's nearly empty there, so I'm just going to show you how, in fact I'll do Peacock because we're going to be using Peacock. So to do that, I would just take the lid off very carefully. You do not want to flick this stuff everywhere. I'll grab myself a little spatula and I can get a tiny amount. You really don't need much at all. A little bit like that. Drop it into our palette. And before I do anything else, put that lid back on again. This powder, as you saw from the tiny amount that I sprinkled on the card and how vibrant the colour is, you do not want these escaping on you. So now, just to wet that, I can just get my water brush and just drop, or a pipette, just drop a couple of drops of water in. I have still checking that I have still got water in the water brush. 2 drops is plenty, which means you usually get 3. And then I'm just going to mix that into a paint. And then when I finish with that today, that will just dry out. And then I'll be able to travel with this, as you can see by the fact that I've got other colours in there. You do find if you're travelling a bit and it's getting bounced around a bit, some of the dry colour will flick out into the surrounds or maybe in with the other colours. So after a few months of travelling, I normally find that I'll give it a bit of a wash out. And I hate doing it because it feels like you're wasting colour everywhere. But you're using so little that it really doesn't matter. So I'll give it a wash and then start again with putting my colours in. Do be very careful how you pop the colours in, that you just put a touch in, and don't, whatever you do, spritz it with water, because that'll flick colours out of that well and into some of the other colours. So just put it in carefully. Once it dries, it'll last you for quite a while. So I've now got a brush loaded with Peacock, so let's use that. We're going to bring it in closer to our baubles, and I'll just use my filbert brush just to soften that a bit so that it smudges in with the rest of the colour that we've already got there. This is just going to make those baubles pop a little bit more. You see how fantastic they are to paint with because of how rich those colours are. And who can resist a little bit of turquoise? So I'm just trying to soften out the edge so that we just get a shadow there. Now I'm not trying to create, often when I do a shadow, I'm wanting to shade on one side. So we've got a light source on one side and a shadow on the other. With this one, I just want to shade around the whole lot so that we get so it makes all of the center design pop out. Now, while I've still got turquoise on the brush, I'll cover all the turquoise area. If you're mixing some colours in your palette to get it ready and you had lots on your brush, that might be a time to make a couple of backgrounds. Okay, we're nearly into blue territory there. So you see, if you just give your brush a bit of a squeeze, you can just sort of push some water into it and let the colours basically blend themselves out. If you need to, because you're putting colour over where we've already put some colour, if it looks like you're developing some other lines that you don't like, just pat and smudge your brush over that until you've blended it out as much as you want to. The other thing is, because of the nature of a watercolour medium, you'll see we've already naturally developed some stronger and lighter patches and lines. So if we get a few lines from our blending here, it's really not going to show up as much different to the rest of the card, which is great. Let's just add a touch more close to the bauble. You can see we're looking for this background to be really, really rich. Excellent. Now I'm going to give that, I could just brush this out on my scrap paper just until I cleaned it, but because it's got so much colour on from having mixed that colour, I'm actually going to use a water jar just to really get that clean before we move on to the next one. So our next colour looks like it's going to be the Duke. That was the next colour that we used, which would be this one here. I don't know whether you can see, but I have labelled with a permanent marker below each well what colour I've got in it. I'm not actually remembering just by looking at them what colour's what. So yeah, I've just got it written underneath there what colour it is. And there, you thought I was being really clever remembering the colours, hey? Actually, I'm not bad on remembering these ones. I do, the Duke, the Cobalt and the Navy can all look a little bit similar until you start working with them. going into the turquoise there, so I'm just going to clean my brush and just buff that into the turquoise. So you can see how these ornaments are really starting to pop because of this strong colour around them. Let's just soften it a bit. I'm really not good at doing really close shadows. I see some people doing beautiful little grey shadows, and I have to do smudgy ones, or I make them way too obvious, so I stick to doing smudgy ones. So you can see I've got a bit of a line there. I'm just moving a bit more water into it until that starts to smooth out a bit. And we're down into our purple. So again, I'll give my brush a rinse. And now we're going to pick up some of the passion purple. So you can see how once you put your wet brush into that well, how quickly that colour activates again. I don't know whether Matthew saw that. Is he going in for a closer? Oh, look, isn't he wonderful? So yes, that was dry colour, and then as you put the brush on, it just activates into that beautiful watercolour paint. Okay, let's go around our last bauble. Now I'm going to just tease that into the blue a bit so we don't get a solid delineation of colour where we're going from purple to blue. I can see a bit of a line forming there, so I'm just going to push a bit of water into that. Oh, the colour's fantastic. So rich. Oh, a bit too much water. Nice little bit and round into the turquoise. Okay, that we could always leave it just like that. That's fabulous. Okay,
but you won't.
But I won't. I hope everyone heard that, but it's true, I won't. Okay, so I'm just giving my brushes a good rinse through. And now I'm going to look at our perfect pearls. So I've picked up turquoise because this is going to go lovely with the blues. And I'm just going to put a little bit onto an acrylic block as a palette. Now the shimmer dusts that we're using, they already have a mica shine to them, but I just want a bit more. Or you could look at it that the Perfect Pearls is actually a fairly soft shimmer. So we're going to add a bit more colour to that. On dark card, as you might have seen if you've watched our black on black class, on dark card the Perfect Pearls don't need any other colour added to them. But on light cardstock, a bit of ink or shimmer dust or something added to them is going to just activate them and make them look a bit stronger. I'll show you. If we were just to paint with this on there, it's going to look, I'm going to say fairly insipid, but you know what it's doing? It's picking up on some of those little flicks of colour that went on there. Remember when I said that when we were spritzing the background with water that a few bits of colour would flick on? That's all it needed. I haven't needed to pick up any more from the palette. It is just what's come from those flicks, and just mixing that with our Perfect Pearls is enough to give our bauble some colour. But I'm just letting a little bit stronger at the edge but leaving it quite soft so that we've still got a lot of contrast between our bauble and the background colour. Now let's look at the turquoise side. So we'll pick up again a little bit of our turquoise Perfect Pearls, and I'm just going to put on and see what happens. I think there we go, we've got some turquoise activating. That's a little bit of the blue, so I'm just going to wipe my brush out and just blend that a little bit softly, hoping to pick up a bit more turquoise in it. If I wanted a bit more turquoise, I could add some from my palette, but I'm thinking that that's, again, I don't want to do too much and take away from the lift that we're getting to those from that darker background. So let's just pick up a little bit more Perfect Pearls. We're going to pop a bit more on our palette. So I'm only grabbing a very small amount on the end of a spatula. And we're going to hope that we've got a little bit of purple on this centre bauble. If we haven't, we will just pick up a touch of the Passion, mix it in with our colour on our palette, and then paint with that. And we're going to get a lovely mauvey tone with a few little bits of blue sneaking in. That is one thing when you're working with shimmer dust, is you're never quite sure what you're going to get. That's half the fun of them. That's coming up beautifully multicoloured. So there is our 3 baubles. And I was going to shade around the edge of the card, but I don't think so. I think actually we might just stamp our greeting in the bottom, and I've changed my mind. I was going to do VersaFine Majestic Blue, but with all that lovely turquoise around, I've actually changed. I'm going to use Deep Lagoon. So let's just ink our stamp up, and I have grabbed the Fun Seasons Greetings. And we're going to pop it just down in this bottom corner, I think, or no, it might look better that side. A little bit more open on that side. So let's put it in there. So it's very much a background piece. It's the baubles that are the main feature. If I wanted the greeting to stand out more, I would emboss it in the silver as well. And in fact, it would be good to emboss it before you do the shimmer dust, because then the pigments, as they move with the water, they pool around the embossing. So if I wanted this to really stand out, I would be better to emboss it in silver at the same time as I emboss the picture, and then let the inks pool around it. But I've just wanted it more as just a background piece and leaving this as the main statement. So I think all I want to do with that now is just add some silver glitter. And I think what I want to do is just add a little bit to the centres of our little starbursts. Just make sure it's running and we haven't got any air bubbles. And I think I'm planning on it. Just run a little bit of silver around this centre bauble, just to make it stand out from the other two a little bit. So mainly on the edge. This silver's getting a little bit near the end, so I'm having to give it a fair squeeze to make it happen. So around the edge. Now these 3 baubles do come as stamps on their own. If you happen to like just one of the shapes more than the others, you can get them all individually. And that does give you the freedom of stamping them either individually or together. They are a bigger size when they're on their own. So a little bit in the centre of each of those starbursts. And I'm happy and done. Let's just move it over onto the black tablecloth so you can see those stamp colours standing out. Oh my goodness, how magic's that? So thank you for joining me for another adventure. So a Christmas with a little bit of a different twist of colours, adding something different to our traditional reds and greens. But you know, what colour's not Christmas really, especially if you add a bit of glitter in there. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back soon with another video with Crafting with Kathy for Christmas. Okay, thanks, bye.